countdown.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Afterburners Podcast. It is Wednesday, August 8th, 2018. I am your host, Sam Niedermeyer. With me, as always, Mr. Bobby Koch. And Bobby, you were looking quite swanky today on Twitter with your new outfits.
Yeah, Sam and I went shopping earlier today. He has better fashion sense than I do.
Allegedly.
So we went out, we had a little mandate, and I ended up looking a little better. I went back to my schlubby clothes for this podcast, but when I start business school, I'll be looking good thanks to Sam.
Yeah, Bobby started some business classes in about 2 weeks. We've been going back to business school. So one of the things he wanted to do was not wear T-shirts and shorts and baggy jeans. So are you happy with today?
Every instinct I had is apparently wrong. I'd be like, oh, this fits. And Sam would be like, that's 2 sizes too large. So clearly I don't know anything.
What's really funny is the feedback you're getting on Twitter versus the feedback you've gotten on Instagram.
That's true. So on Twitter, all the 40-year-old fantasy dudes that I talk to hate it. On Instagram, all the 20-somethings that follow me and Sam on Instagram love it. So I guess I'm appealing to the right crowd.
And that's what you're trying to do because you'll be with a bunch of
That's true.
20-somethings, 40-somethings. We got a couple people on today that range between the ages of 20 and 40, I think. So really excited to get their opinion on Bobby's fashion sense. Hopefully they had a chance to check it out. If not, we're going to drill them anyways. We got the host and co-host of Dynasty Crossroads. We got Peter Howard, Jake Anderson. We're going to introduce them right now, guys. How you doing today?
as I watch Peter be like, unmute myself. I'm doing great. So I'll go first, I guess. I always love the awkward silence, and I just can't take it. So I will talk first. I'm doing very well. I'm much more lively and awake than Peter is tonight. Is that correct, Peter?
That is correct, Jake.
So just to give you listeners some context, they're both the host and co-host over at Dynasty Crossroads. Jake, who spoke first, kind of begrudgingly a little bit, it seemed like, to make sure that Peter was okay. Jake, he is the writer for Dynasty League Football, owner of Fantasy Graphics. So that means you create all those awesome avatars that people are shouting after Scott Fishbowl, right?
Really quick story there.
Yeah.
One time Sam saw a bunch of graphics. I think it was right around the time Scott Fishbowl was getting rolling, and he's like, why does everyone have these avatars? Where are they coming from? Is some company doing it? And I was like, no, it's 2 people. It's Jake Anderson and Clint Fowle. So anytime I need any graphics, and I've said this before, I go to Jake. Jake is what I call my fantasy barber. I refuse to go to anyone else for fantasy graphics needs. It's like you can't go to anyone else to cut your hair. I can't go to anyone else for those graphics. So quick plug for Jake. If you need fantasy graphics, make sure to hit him up at the handle that we dropped a few minutes ago, and he will help you out at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, I appreciate that, guys. That was something that I got into last year for SFB 7. And, man, things just kind of took over my life. And I thought Twitter was a problem. But dealing with fantasy graphic requests has been a new animal and has taken away any chance of me having more time to write and develop my dynasty. Status is gone out the window, but I gotta say, I just really enjoy it. I am certainly not a professional in that realm, but I just do it for fun. You know, I was into art as a kid, and I was a drawer, and it's just kind of a way for me to have that creative release in my life. So I appreciate that, Bobby.
Jake, how long does it take you to make one of those?
It depends. It really depends. I mean, I've done so many of them that I've gotten pretty efficient with them. So just a standard player avi for Twitter, I usually can bang that out in about 15, 20 minutes.
He's being modest. One time I gave him, I think, my most recent Spider-Man avatar. I was like, hey, Jake, I want this on a cool background, basically no direction. And not even probably 2 seconds later, he's like, here you go. So Jake's being very modest. You can get those done very quickly.
Some of these are pretty copy paste. It's just, I think if you have an eye for the design, it makes things go very quickly. So if you have something in your mind and you know what kind of background, you know what kind of foreground that you want, or if the person is just being specific, sometimes things click really fast, and then some things take time to develop.
Yeah, and this is a perfect juxtapose to your co-host and battery mate over there, Peter Howard. He's a writer for Dynasty League Football and FF Statistics, but most importantly, he's a numbers extraordinaire over at Roto Underworld. Peter, are you going to drop some math on us tonight?
No. No, I'm not really any of those things. I like using statistics and metrics to try and understand football and what's going on and players more. But I'm neither exceptionally good at math or exceptionally good at statistics. What I do is listen to the people that are, and then try and copy what they find out and repeat it for myself and share that as much as possible. Most of them are far too busy to update us on their latest metric every week. And I'm not, because I'm, a lot less important. So I've got the time and I want to know it. And while I'm finding it out, I try and share it. But I wouldn't consider myself an expert at any of it.
Peter's being very modest too.
Yeah.
If he's not,
don't you just want to punch him in the face sometimes?
A little bit.
If he's not very good at math, like, I don't know what level he would consider himself, but whatever he is, I'm a baby compared to that. Like, I ask him to explain things to me like I'm in kindergarten all the time. So Peter's being very modest. He's very good at math. He's very good at stats. A lot of the charts he's created on his own. It's not just other experts' work. If you ever need any help with any kind of fantasy numbers or just numbers in general, Peter is a friendly guy that you can reach out to.
No, that's true. I will say that if I have anything skill-wise that I think I'm good at, it's going and finding what people are interested in and then, getting it to them. Like, people have asked me before, like, what's the market share numbers for this guy or that guy? And I'm pretty good at ferreting it out and putting it in a usable format. So, yeah, by all means, hit me up.
Yeah, similar to Jake, if you ask Peter for some numbers that you want, he'll have it to you within like 2 seconds in a graph that he might have to explain to you if you're me, because I don't really understand them so well. Clearly, that's why I'm going back to school. But he'll get that to you really quickly, and he's very modest about his own ability, just like Jake. So that's why they're a good pair for a podcast, I guess.
And I'll plug Peter because I know he won't do it himself, but Peter does have a Patreon page where you can become a subscriber monthly, starting at like $1 a month, which I do. And the amount of work he just, the emails I get about the charts and statistics he's posting is invaluable. So if you do enjoy Peter's work, feel free to check his handle out on Twitter and become a Patreon member. Well worth it.
Yeah, I definitely encourage you all to do that as well.
All right, guys, great start. Let's talk some football. We got a great show for everyone today. We're going to go into, obviously, we have the co-host and host of Dynasty Crossroads. We're going to go into some rankings here on a few quarterbacks: Mariota, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, Derek Carr, Eli Manning. Really going to go in depth on Andrew Luck. Got a couple Twitter questions we're going to answer. Of course, our burns of the week that we're going to have to fall in on. Before we get all that, let's start off with Peter's Twitter handle where you can find all those beautiful metrics. Jake, you followed up where you can find out all those beautiful avatars, and then we're going to get rolling.
We're bad at this, Jake. Every time we go on a podcast, we're like, introduce yourselves. And then 5 minutes later, the host is like, hey, do you want to tell them where they can find you, maybe? Oh, yeah, right. No, you can find me on Twitter at PA Howdy. I write for DLF, as Bobby already said, and Bobby does as well. So you can find a lot of my work there. I've also started to post some stuff on FF Statistics, but it's really our podcast we're having the most fun with at the moment, and that's at Dino Crossroads on Twitter. Jake,
very well done, Peter. Very professional. It's almost like you rehearsed that part.
I don't even own a mirror. I don't talk into the mirror before anything.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at NFL Draft Talker, and that the graphics page is at Fantasy Graphics. That's fantasy, and then graphics is GRAFIX.
And you can find me at Rekt Fantasy. That's REKED Fantasy. As Peter mentioned, you can find my work at DLF Football, as well as 2QBs. And just one quick thing, at the end of this show, I'm announcing a contest to give away a 2QBs draft guide. A lot of the show tonight is dedicated to talking about Peter's article in that draft guide. So if this interests you at all, you should enter the contest and try to win it. If not, you should go out and buy one, especially because some of the proceeds all go to, or not all go, but some of the proceeds go to NCADV, which is the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. It's a very good cause. And I'll stop my little spiel now.
I like how you're teasing it for people to wait until the end before the juicy stuff.
Well, at this point, they've listened to us all plug our different things, so they're probably tuning out. So I have to give them something to look forward to at the end of the pod.
Of course, this is the Afterburners podcast. You can find us on Twitter at AfterburnersPod. Don't forget to find us on Podbean, Stitcher, and iTunes. We're up to 12 reviews now. Very happy by that. Continue the reviews coming. And don't forget to download and subscribe.
3 more and the T-shirts are coming. We said 15. We're keeping to that.
Three more reviews. Make sure they're 5. I actually want to see one star in there. Like, I just want someone to just burn the shit out of us. Like, after burn the shit of us, get us a 1 star.
Make us your burn of the year.
I want like iTunes and Google to know that we're not just like loading the stats, right? Like, it's a realistic
it's not just
show.
us creating different accounts, giving ourselves 5 stars. We promise.
So, guys, all right, let's get started. So, unfortunately, Jake's gonna like feel like kind of left out or something here, but right now it's all about the Peter Howard show because our first little topic involves a Peter Howard article over on 2QBs.com. So, Peter, is kind of like a 2-part question. We'll break it down for you to make it nice and simple since, well, as Jake,
simple.
You weren't sure we're ready to be started here. But anyways, and one of your recent articles that Bobby said, obviously you can purchase off 2QBs.com, you identified as 2018 breakouts, right? So it's Mariota, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, Derek Carr, and Eli Manning. That's the easy part to remember. The hard part to remember is that there was a whole lot of algorithms and math stuff. So for people like, let's call it me, how can you break some of that down? What was some of the math that you used to kind of figure out these breakout stars?
Yeah, thanks. I was really happy to contribute to that because there's some serious work in it, and so I'm kind of drafting off the laurels of most of the people in there, trying to hang out with some of the big boys in 2QB. But it's important to remember the point of that article, and the point was to find the next Alex Smith, the 2017 version of Alex Smith. It's a quarterback that randomly jumps up into the top 5, not just startable, but like the quarterback that everyone didn't expect to be one of the most startable quarterbacks that season. I started out by looking, how often does that actually happen? Because it didn't seem like that happens very often. But I found at least every year there's one quarterback who becomes a top 12 player who never had been before. And it was actually about 60-70% of the time back to 2000 that happens, that a quarterback jumps into the top 5, having never been anywhere close to that before. It gets more familiar if I start shouting out names like Andy Dalton, Alex Smith, Matt Ryan's done it twice. We don't expect them to, but then suddenly they're this really valuable quarterback because everyone drafted them late and they're startable every week with the more skill-based performance players like Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. And so I'm looking for a unicorn. And that said a lot, but in the quarterback position, this really is the quarterback you can't really predict. Because it's something unpredictable. That's why it's unexpected. And so from that angle, it's a weird thing to go looking to try and predict. But what I did is basically looked at all those quarterbacks who had done it, who had just jumped in unexpectedly into the top 5, and tried to see what was the difference between the year before and the year they actually jumped up, and see if there are any similarities. And I found some pretty good things that happened with all of them. And so then I looked at the quarterbacks from 2017 and tried to isolate which ones kind of best fit that profile. And those were the 5 I came up with. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by their names. They're interesting more or less to everyone in Dynasty or Redraft. They're good shots late anyway. But I think of the quarterbacks that you can get, say, after the top 5 go off the board, those are the most likely to do the unicorn ride. I guess, simply, and really the only thing that I found that I could really try and rest my hat on was that the year before they break out, they are all under their own personal efficiency, pretty much in every category. There's 1 or 2 examples where they're not, or because efficiency is sometimes weird like that. But and so that what that means is you need a quarterback with a decent history. You can't say a quarterback is inefficient in a year if he hasn't already played for at least 3 years, because you really don't know what his efficiency average looks like. And so that's why all of them have been in the league for at least a couple of years. I found the average year, career year as a starting quarterback was around 4 or 5, for example. And so quarterbacks like Trubisky and Patrick Mahomes, while I'm really excited about them for different reasons, they're less likely to do this unexpected jump in 2018. Was that too long or too boring?
No, I think that makes sense. You're pretty on point. I think we got it after.
Okay.
You lost me with efficiency because I don't know the term of that, but I got it after 4 or 5 years. They're basically hitting the prime. Jake, when you think about somebody that's about to hit a breakout year, specifically a quarterback, what are you looking at? Are you kind of as Peter kind of convinced you at this point to look at some of the things he's looking at, or are you looking at some other thing, some other data?
I mean, I'm nowhere near Peter as far as metrics, analytics. That's not how my brain functions. I wish it did. I wish I was as smart as Peter. I will never be that smart, so that's not the way.
Nobody on this podcast will ever be that smart.
Don't do this. Don't go down his road of building me up so that all he has to do is not fall off his chair to sound like he's won. He does it every fucking week. Jake's just as smart as me, and every week he tries to convince everyone that because he doesn't, crap himself on the chair, that he's done remarkably well. He's lowering expectations here. That's all crap.
That is my life philosophy, and my wife absolutely hates it. I say, listen, under promise, over perform. That's my life philosophy. And my wife hates it. She thinks it's an absolute cop out. But getting back to what I'm looking for as far as quarterback breakouts, I'm a tape guy. I'm a film guy. So I tend to go back to the film, whether it's whether it's these quarterbacks in their pre-draft process coming out of college, or if it's just previous NFL years. Peter and I talked about Derek Carr last week on the Dino Crossroads, and it's pretty funny how analysts and just the community, fans, everybody overreacts to a down season for any position, but especially quarterbacks. Last year we had Derek Carr and Dak Prescott in the top 6 or 7 dynasty quarterbacks, and now they're both well outside of that. I think Derek Carr's at 22 and Dak is around 17 or 18, I want to say off the top of my head. So I tend to just go back to how I evaluated these quarterbacks. And then also I try to look at their supporting cast, what changed this year. Did they get new weapons? Did they get a new offensive coordinator? Is that an upgrade? Is that a downgrade? And then try to, listen to smarter people than I that do projections and see how they foresee it next season coming out. So, I just tend to go back to my evaluations and try to project that way.
And one thing, Jake, that also works in the reverse where we overreact to good seasons too.
Sure.
And also, Marcus Mariota was another you didn't mention, but he was like top 5 last season, and he didn't fall quite as hard, but he had a down season and definitely fell a little bit in the dynasty community's eyes. But I know Sam didn't ask me, but I'm going to give my own opinion of how I evaluate quarterbacks anyway.
Go right into it.
So I do kind of a combination between the two. I've made this claim before. Peter's definitely a numbers or metrics guy. Jake's a film guy. I'm a narrative guy, and what I mean by that is I use really basic numbers and what I've watched of games to tell myself a story, and also just research of what Jake was talking about, like what has the offensive coordinator done in the past, what do the weapons look like, to tell myself a story of what success or not success looks like for a player. And then I try to see which one I convince myself of more. And I actually build narratives for both. This is what people don't know. They always just see one narrative because I only reveal what I think of the player once I've made that final determination. But I build narratives for both. So I say, this is what success this season will look like for this player. And I also have this is what success won't look like for this player. And depending on which one I think is more convincing, at least to myself, that's the one I air out publicly. But a specific stat that I like to see in growth year over year, and I know a few people who are much smarter than me have talked about it, is the average net yards per attempt. I like to see that go up, just because if it's not going up, that's generally a problem. And if I recall, Derek Carr did go down slightly last season. However, to Derek Carr's defense, and I know you guys talked about this, and everyone should check out that episode. He's one of a very few quarterbacks who in his first few seasons has passed for 100 touchdowns. And he did have a broken back last year, presumably. So I'm not completely off that train either. And Sam,
I can confirm some of that if you want.
Sorry, what was that, Peter?
I can confirm some of that if you want. I have a sheet pulled up that looks that stuff up, and he was actually at 6.79 yards per attempt, and he was 7.4 the year before. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons he made my potential list, because his efficiency dropped last year, and that's a potentially positive thing for next year. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Peter, when you say efficiency, is there something that you figured out yourself? Like, where are you finding this efficiency, and like what specific efficiency is it?
Well, in that context, I was talking about yards per attempt. So the number of yards a player gains for every time they throw the ball, yards per attempt. I was going to come back to that because you said I lost you with efficiency. It's a really good point. It's a word I use a lot, and lots of people use a lot, and I'm not sure we ever put it in a single definition. And I was trying to think of like a metaphor or something to the way I think about it. Driving might be a good one, whether it's a race car driver or just someone going to the store and back every time. If someone is driving from point A to point B over and over again once a day every week, but they're always doing it in 7 minutes when everyone else is doing it in 8 minutes, that means they are covering more distance in the same amount of time repeatedly, right? And so they're covering distance more efficiently. And does that help articulate what efficiency is? It's you're doing more with the same amount.
What you're saying is you got to find the quarterback that's speeding.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was talking about, personal efficiency. I mean, once you've got 4 years of a player, and some efficiency stats are better than others, and I think wide receivers have the best efficiency stats right now, which is what makes them, frankly, more predictable and understandable. But yards per attempt is one of the best ones. Bobby already mentioned it. 4 quarterbacks, I think, right now. And Pacer is an up-and-coming one, which is just a lot better, but not many people are. I don't know if people are familiar with that, so I'm staying away from it for just now. And that's one based on air yards, the amount of yards they throw that actually get converted into receiving yards. Frisco Josh and Josh Hernsmeyer, that is, Frisco Josh is his Twitter handle, and ADHD, Josh ADHD are the two that put out Pacer for everyone. So those are better efficiency metrics, but yards per attempt is a good standard.
It's a basic dumbed down version. Pacer is when you want to go to the more advanced, and I look at Pacer occasionally too. It's just you do need to have a little bit of a better understanding than just basic, very quick skim look at the net yards per attempt and make a judgment call.
I also think if you're listening to people you can trust, like I like the 2 Joshes I just mentioned, if they say something, I trust that they're describing something that's important because I know they know their stuff. But if anyone's like me, the reason I'm doing all this stuff for myself and then trying to put it out is because I don't really trust anyone. I want to be able to see it for myself, and so that's why I try and stay away from Pacer, because, like you say, I don't think people maybe understand it as quickly, therefore don't trust it, and I'm not someone you should trust just because of my name, right? So I stick with the yards per attempt.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. And just a follow-up, and then we'll move on to our next topic. And this doesn't have to necessarily be guys from the article. If you guys each had to pick one, as Peter called them, unicorns.
Speeding unicorns.
Speeding unicorns.
Originally. Very original.
For the 2018 season, who would your one speeding unicorn be? And let's start with Jake, just because it's Peter's article, so we'll give Jake the...
So this is a quarterback that has never finished in the top 5?
Yeah.
Did Dak finish in the top 5?
No, Dak's never done it.
Nah, okay. Dak's never done it.
Dak would be my guy then.
That answer.
Dak would be my guy, and especially at the value you can get him in dynasty leagues and in redraft leagues right now.
For 2018, can you? Why so?
I think people forget how good of a season he was having last year in the first 8 weeks of the season before Tyron Smith got hurt and that offense just fell apart. I think people, obviously the lack of weapons in the passing game are a concern, but when you have a quarterback that can create on his own and use his legs, the floor is so high there that I think a top five season isn't out of the cards. And certainly I think he's going to outperform his ADP.
He did finish 6th in his first year.
Yeah, I knew it was close there.
Yeah, he came very close. And he also, people underestimate how many rushing touchdowns he gets too. He's accounted, I think, both seasons for something like 25% of the Cowboys' rushing touchdowns, which is pretty insane for a quarterback.
It's a really good point. How much do you guys weigh that? Because the more and more I think about it, with Jake pointing out that quarterbacks should really be about upside, and who is it, Rich Harbour, who always points out the Konami code. So how much do you weigh rushing into quarterback decisions?
I mean, to me, that's like a complete variance, right? Like, I don't think it's something that I would bank on. Like, obviously, if it's Dak or Cam Newton, I'm like, okay, like, he's going to get rushing towns more than, like, Tom Brady, right? Like,
Russell Wilson, too.
But I'm not going to – I don't think I want to bank it on the fact that, hey, like, Cam's going to outscore, let's call it, like, like Andrew Luck, or maybe that's not a good example, but Cam's not going to outscore, Tom Brady just because of – I don't know, what's a good example? Cam to
Well – I can't give you a good example because I'm going to go the complete opposite of you and say that rushing upside is absolutely something that I look for in my quarterbacks.
All right, well, then you're just a dick.
And that's why that's why Russell Wilson is one of my top quarterbacks. That's why even though I know a lot of people dislike him, here's the obligatory hashtag the Blake mention. Blake Bortles gets a lot of rush yards and rushing touchdowns. And if you give me a choice between, let's say, your example, if I thought Cam Newton was actually pretty apt, if you give me a choice between the two where I think they're relatively similar in skill, you can make an argument one way or the other, and I'd probably buy it one way or the other. And personally, I'm a bigger Andrew Luck guy just because I had a huge man crush on him, so I'm hoping he's healthy. But if you're saying they're similar skill, I'll probably 10 times out of 10 take the guy with the rushing ability.
Ladies and gentlemen, we made it 26 minutes into an episode before Blake Bortles' name was mentioned.
This is the time I have to go, fellas.
New record?
It could be.
I just got over the Blake, and I don't want to catch it again. So I'm going
to go to the doctor real quick and get my Blake checked out. Peter, what of those guys you mentioned, who's your speeding unicorn?
Of the 5, I like Derek Carr as a dark horse candidate, but I think Marcus Mariota is probably the guy I'm targeting. Honestly, you want to know the most likely? Probably not going to happen, but just based on one of the things I saw is the quarterbacks who do this bounce up and down in efficiency pretty regularly to suddenly do this spectacular season no one is expecting, tend to do it more than once. Matt Ryan is someone that's done it at least twice. So he's probably top of the list in likelihood, but I really like the odds of Marcus Mariota. So I'm naming 3 guys, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Final unicorn speeding because apparently Peter Howard cannot make up his mind and wants to sit on the
Well, all right. So this is going to be totally on brand. I'm going to say Blake Bortles. And I'm going to say Blake Bortles because I have legitimate reasons. One, I think he actually has, even though Allen Robinson is gone, I think he has the best pass catchers that he's had his entire career. 2, I know we're not supposed to fall for the best shape of their career stuff, but I do actually know that he has had that wrist ligament injury and he had that surgically repaired and supposedly he's throwing better. 3, Leonard Fournette is going to take a step forward this year, I think, which is going to help him by opening up passing lanes. So I think Blake Bortles will finally finish as a top 5, and I'll take a victory lap, and James Katulis will have to wear an avatar on Twitter for a month that has like Blake Bortles in a heart around it that Jake is going to make for him. Again, check out Fantasy. Go. Blake Bortles is my speeding unicorn.
Hey, Jake, if we can really get the Blake trending, is there any way that like you can create some type of, how do I put this delicately, STD ridden avatar with Blake Bortles? Is that possible?
I think anything in the context of a negative context with Blake Bortles attached to it, I could create.
Oh, that's
the whole Blake Bortles with the heart around it. I don't know if I could attach my name to that. Like I might make it for Bobby, but then and just make him promise that he'll never say that I made it for him?
I do not want to be associated with it.
It might be better if I do it because then it'll look really bad, and that will probably just make it even funnier.
If Blake Bortles doesn't become a top 5 this year, would you wear a shirt that has something that Jake may or may not have created about having a Blake Bortles STD?
Sure, I'll do that.
I love it. I love it.
Also, I will say that I already have a bet with James, which is why I mentioned it. I have to renounce Blake Bortles. I think if he doesn't finish as a top 12 in PPG or maybe as 13, it might have even been 15, but it was something in the teens. So you guys may see me renounce Blake Bortles this year, though I doubt it because I just made a bet that he's finishing top 5 or I have to wear a really gross T-shirt.
That's a strong call in his receivers group, actually. It's interesting. I think most would say the opposite, that it's probably his worst receivers group.
That's because people really love Allen Robinson, and I get it. But
who do you love instead?
Across the board, he has better receivers, I think. I'm not saying he has the best top end. I'm just saying depth-wise, he has the best guys he's had to work with.
So, like, Dante Moncrief is better than Rashad Green, kind of a thing.
Exactly. Like, Dante Moncrief is better than Rashard Green. Keelan Cole is a good piece. Marquise Lee, even DJ Shark, for example. And then ASJ is easily the most talented tight end that he's had to work with. Whether that translates or not, he's definitely the most athletic and most game-breaking ability. That's another one, just a freebie for everybody. I really believe in ASJ this year. So if you're looking for a late tight end, that's a guy to target.
He's like, even in like best ball drafts, he's like going as tight end 18. And he's just Charles Clay, he's going like tight end 15.
Yep.
ASJ is going at like tight end 18. Those are like two of my lockdown guys that
he's going after Austin Hooper. And between Hooper and ASJ, I would take ASJ.
That sounds right.
He's due some touchdowns too.
Yep.
One of the guys we just mentioned, Jake, was Andrew Luck a few moments ago. And I think what's interesting is between the two of you, you guys kind of are disagreeing, so to speak, on the ranking of Andrew Luck.
I wouldn't say this is kind of a disagreement. They're pretty – this is like a disapart.
I'm going to cut you off here because it's really not fair because –
Jake's going to weasel out of it a little bit.
Oh, like you wouldn't. Have you guys listened to our Sam Darnold? Have you listened to our Sam Darnold episode? Have you listened to our Sam Darnold episode on Dynasty Crossroads? Peter weasels out of everything, so I
weasel out of nothing.
So this was my ranking probably at least 6 weeks ago. Before I stopped doing 2 QB ranks, I actually had to print them out because they weren't viewable on DLF anymore, and I didn't change them. I just sent them I printed them out. I sent them to Bobby. So this was well over a month ago when there was much bigger question marks on Andrew Luck. So,
and to your point, to be fair, we were supposed to have this episode a few weeks ago. We had some technical difficulties. So yeah, we'll vouch for you.
We'll allow it, but
let's allow some more context. Though, I mean, when were these ranks updated? Was it 3 minutes before this podcast? 10? I mean, let's get the other end of the bracket.
They're still unupdated. Well, I switched from 2 QBs to standard, so I'm in the process of doing my top 200 there. So nothing has been updated yet.
We're going to put you on the spot then. Where would you rank Andrew Luck now with all the information you have available to you?
He'd be probably right after Cam. I think he'd probably be in the top 6 range. I think the back end of the top 6.
You guys are not nearly as different as we thought we were, and this may not be as interesting a segment as we thought it would be.
That's okay.
So what changed then? Was it all the reports coming out that he was looking good? Was it the fact that he'll probably start the first preseason game? Like, what's
just the fact that he's throwing a football is a good sign. And we didn't know that 6 weeks ago.
It's like 100% better.
And there was reports saying that he was going to be fine, but there were the same reports that we heard last offseason. So I also do have some question marks about that shoulder holding up. We don't know how that shoulder's going to hold up. You know, if he takes a shot on that shoulder, it could be another surgery needed, and his career could be over. So, like I said, I haven't updated my rankings, but just top of the head, I think I'd put him right around there because we know what kind of upside he has, and we know that defense isn't really going to do a whole lot for that Colts. So, they put a lot of weight on his shoulders, and they make him throw it a lot. So the volume is always there, and we've seen him produce in the past. So I'd say around that top 6 range. But why I was so hesitant was just those question marks with his health.
To your defense too, he did recently come out and admit that he didn't know if he was ever. There's a point where he didn't know if he was ever going to play football again. So it's not like he was fine the whole time and everyone knew he was fine. It was questionable at times, and even he himself said he was questioning whether he'd be able to return.
Let me follow it up with a quick question. Jake, you've seen the film on Andrew Luck. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ugly is the dude?
Without shoulder pads and a helmet?
Let's just say he's dressed up in his finest Bobby clothing that Bobby wore today. Like, how ugly is he?
How ugly is that? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the ugliest?
That's actually, good question. 10 is the ugliest.
10 is the ugliest. Andrew Luck. I mean, there's a lot of uglier dudes than Andrew
On a
Luck
scale of
there.
1 to Sam Darnold, how ugly is he?
Oh, jeez.
I don't think
it's like triply ironic because
that's fantastic. I mean, I would say if 10 is the ugliest, I think Andrew Luck's like a 5.
All right, so he's average.
I think he's a very average looking dude.
All right, that's fair. He's an indie like 3 and a normal 5. That sounds good. All right, Peter.
Yeah.
Let's go to you real quick. We'll get to your question about the ugliness, and I'm sure you've got some statistics to back that up.
Okay, I thought you were going to rank me. I was getting worried.
We can turn into that if you'd like.
What's below 10?
Andrew Luck, you have QB3.
Yeah.
Expand on how you have him as QB3.
Well, I am just shocked, I say, at the cowardice rampant in the Andrew Luck rankings, frankly. I mean, Jake over there just quivering in his... No, I'm just kidding. Jake, I am actually a little surprised. Jake's one of the bravest rankers, at bravery relative to ranking a football player. We're not talking about, cops and superheroes here. But, he is a pretty brave ranker. If he believes something, if he sees something on a player, he'll put him up there. If he liked Rashad Penny the way I do, he'd put him above Barkley if he honestly believed that. And so I am a little shocked because I feel a lot of rankers that I feel that way about who are brave in their rankings, hedging on Luck, and I don't understand it. Something that Jake's actually taught me, and I keep trying to remind myself of, is that quarterback's about upside, right? And that's why we're willing to put Mahomes and Trubisky up in dynasty ranks, and even Wentz, because it was just one season, and Deshaun Watson, because the upside is worth it at a position where it basically doesn't matter after the top 3. And that's a really good point. So we're willing to make those bets on players we don't know are good, frankly. And yet, is anyone want to make the case that Andrew Luck is not an elite talent? Silence. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Absolute silence. We know he is Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees level as a talent. So the gamble is he healthy? I don't know. I don't know if he's healthy. I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. But if he is, he's an elite player. I would rather take that gamble at 3 than Deshaun Watson's sample size of this unimaginable efficiency that's hardly ever been done in the NFL continuing and him actually being as good as Andrew Luck. I would rather take that bet because I don't know about health. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to become a doctor. Doctors don't know, especially if they're not examining Andrew Luck, and they also don't know the future. So we don't know. What we do know is the player is top 3 in the league. So I'd rather take that bet than any of these other bets of rookies and sophomores being pushed into the top 12. And that's why I have him at 3.
Yeah, I have to be honest. When you asked about talent and there was silence, I thought you were talking about his looks, but that's for a different level. Bobby, you're a big Andrew Luck fan.
Yep.
You love him.
Yep.
Anything to add there?
No, I was just going to say to Peter's point that Andrew Luck, before he got hurt, was on a historic pace to his career where he was going to, at least if he continued playing his career averages, outplay in terms of breaking records Dan Marino, Peyton Manning, all those guys. He is probably going to end up number one on pretty much every list you can think of. And then, of course, Russell Wilson played healthy last year and went, oh, I can show you what I can do with total offensive yards, but that's neither here or there. Russell Wilson, I'm not cheating on you with Andrew Luck, I promise. But I do love Andrew Luck. I do think it all depends on his health. The only thing I'll add to this whole health thing, because as Peter said, I'm not a doctor, even doctors don't know, is Drew Brees went through a similar injury scare early in his career. It's the only thing that's kind of given me some optimism or hope, because I read it and it was very similar to the things you're reading about Luck now. If you go back and look up like Drew Brees' shoulder injury, people are talking about his career maybe being over, and he's come back and been Drew Brees. So the hope is that Luck can...
Peyton Manning.
Yeah, same idea. Peyton Manning had the quote-unquote career-ending neck injury, and he came back and still did pretty well.
He had one good year after that.
Yeah.
I mean, and to your point, that's a really good comparison. And to your point, that doesn't mean Andrew Luck's more or less likely to continue his career, but it's just it pays off if it works out, and we know it pays off if it works out. And yeah, it's a really good comparison.
Yeah, I'm not saying, again, I hate saying, okay, because this one player did it before, this player will do it too. But since we've seen it happen once, it actually did make me feel at least slightly better, because it was like, all right, one player who had a similar injury and had similar fears about him came back and still dominated the league. If Luck can do this, he is absolutely worth his price. And he's currently cheaper than he probably should be if health wasn't a concern, because if he comes back and shows that he's healthy, he's going to completely outplay his price.
Do you think... Sorry, Sam.
Weird numbers right now. He's completely silly. But one of the things, and maybe Jake, you can light some shit on this, was that like the Colts basically took the Seahawks playbook and said, "Listen, we have a stud quarterback. Let's surround him with no offensive line.
Let's see if we can kill him.
See how far we can stretch this dollar. Let's go from there." Like, is there anything to think about the offensive line?
One thing to add there, you almost took it far enough. They followed the Seahawks plan of no O-line, also no pass catchers outside of one. So like Doug Baldwin, T.Y. Hilton, that's all you get. Yeah. Nothing else.
Let's see how many people you can hang off you before you can't complete a pass. That was basically their plan.
Yeah, Jake, what do you think of that?
Is the offensive line something to worry about there?
Not anymore, I don't think, because they invested highly into the offensive line in this draft class. They got easily the best offensive line in the first round. What's his name? Quentin Nelson. He's going to be an absolute monster of a guard. They drafted another guard, I believe, out of Auburn in the second round, and then they drafted another one in the third or fourth round. So they invested into this offensive line, and it helps that they got probably an all-pro at guard who might even play tackle. Who knows? So I'm not worried about that offensive line, which is huge for a guy that you're worried about with his durability.
And don't forget, Peter's guy, Marlon Mack, is going to rush for 1,500 yards to take some attention off Luck.
That's my guy, man. I love him this year. I like him.
Glad to hear you coming to terms with that.
Yeah, I've went from Marlon Meh to Marlon Maybe.
There you go. That's all I need.
Peter, final word. Andrew Luck.
He pulls, man. He pulls.
He pulls?
Is that the same thing as?
I think, yeah, that's similar to this. That's Peter's. That's Peter's.
None of you watch the same TV shows I do. That's a problem. It's a saying on one of them. No, I was going back to your
show. You can't just say that and then not say what.
I was trying to remember. It's a detective show.
You don't even know what show it is.
No, I don't.
Peter.
Shit.
Peter.
I honestly can't remember, but it's a phrase from one. No, I was going to go back to the attractive version. No. I'm going back to the attractiveness.
I'm going to go check that show out right now.
Is it Sherlock Holmes? Is that what you're talking about?
No. It's half. I'll remember it and let you know in a second. I swear.
All right, send out a tweet if we're not, the show's done.
Oh no, it's Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, yeah, I haven't really watched it that much.
I watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I can't say I remember that saying.
It's when they go to the sci-fi convention to meet Terry's author hero, and he's telling Jake he pulls, man, he pulls, even though he's this ugly troll-looking fella.
Yeah, I kind of recall that. It's basically Brooklyn's Nine-Nine version of This Guy Fucks. They were just yeah.
This guy pulls.
Hey Peter, I actually just crunched a ton of numbers right now. The efficiency that This Guy Fucks is better than he pulls.
Okay.
That's just what the efficiency says.
All right.
All right.
Final word on Andrew Luck from Peter Howard. This guy fucks. That's
yeah. No, seriously, you're talking about how attractive he is, but you take your most attractive, suave friend and then walk him into a club with Andrew Luck, where everyone knows who Andrew Luck is. Who's getting lucky?
Both of them.
No, Andrew Luck's taking them all home. That's how good. That's how good he is.
All right, one person. One person that gave us a question on Twitter, so we're gonna roll up to that.
Yeah, just really quick on this one, guys.
This comes from was it at Eric John Flynn?
The official question asker of Afterburners Pod, Eric Flynn at Eric John Flynn on Twitter asks, more or less, the question can be summed up: Philip Rivers, yay or nay?
Yay.
Peter?
Yay to what he has been. He's going to be that again. Good, but the team's going to hold him back still.
Yeah, low end quarterback one.
Yeah, easy.
Is one of those guys that always is like underrated year after year after year just because he's, I think, like Philip Rivers. Like Matthew Stafford, like it's a lock that if Philip Rivers is your like QB2 on a team, and you're or even like QB1, like that means you got him kind of cheap and you got stacked like receivers and running backs, especially in redraft leagues. Yay! I mean, Phil he's going to do it again this year. What he always does. Low end QB1. I'd say like a QB 8, 9.
Yeah, people just
take him out of Stafford.
He curses on the sideline, so then people like to hate on him. But he's similar. He's like the older Blake Bortles. He was on cool before it was on cool to be cool. I don't even know how to English properly, but he was Blake Bortles before Blake Bortles was Blake Bortles.
Can you guys believe that this guy is comparing Blake Bortles to Philip Rivers after Philip Rivers' complete body of work since day one?
No.
Not really, no.
I mean,
unacceptable.
That's terrible.
Unacceptable. The funny thing is, my wife hates Philip Rivers because she thinks he's a little bitch, and everyone on Twitter says I look like Philip Rivers.
You really do.
Well, you kind of do, actually. Yeah.
I'm just like I'm in a conundrum there. So
sometimes you come on this thing and I'm like, Phil? No.
I think your wife might be trying to suggest something, Jake.
Well, yeah, she already knows I'm a little bitch. So maybe that's she just sees him and then thinks of me. She thinks he throws fits on the sidelines. She doesn't like that. I think it's just emotion and competitiveness. I like it.
I actually like it too. I like it a lot. Like if
show me some fire. Show me some fire.
Baker Mayfield is going to do that exact same shit.
Oh, absolutely. Times 2 probably.
Yeah,
and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Philip Rivers, you're going to compare him to Blake Bortles. Philip Rivers literally has 50,000 yards passing.
He's so hung up on
342 touchdowns.
He's actually good at quarterbacking.
Yeah.
I mean, they both look funny when they throw the ball, but judge it by where it lands, right?
This episode never aired because Jake said that Blake Bortles is bad at quarterbacking. Sorry, guys. This episode's been canceled.
I thought it would be because I said Andrew Luck fucks, but whatever.
That's totally allowed on this podcast.
Oh, yeah, we're at SFW. We've already determined that from iTunes. We've got the little red thing underneath. So you say whatever the fuck you want. Also, I'm really excited to hear about when Jake comes home one day wearing a Philip Rivers uniform. And see what he says.
That's between a man and his wife.
All right, guys. We're kind of shorter on time. So what I want to do is definitely talk to you about what you guys are doing over at Dynasty Crossroads and give us a little spiel about what's going on over there. what you've been doing, what you got coming up next.
Tell us how your next episode is about #the Blake.
Yeah, the Blake. And whoever wants to lead off, go for it.
I just continue to refuse to even put Blake Bortles in any of our polls to decide who we talk about on the Dynasty Crossroads.
Legitimate question. If I died and my last request was that you put Blake Bortles at least in the poll, would you do it? That's a no.
You're breaking up.
It's like any of those zombie movies, man. The second you start mentioning Blake Bortles and you start talking about how, like, oh, you know what, he's not that bad. Guess what? The next person you talk to, you're gonna bite them within, like, you know, like.
I thought you were going somewhere else with this. I thought
the fever, right? They become like Blake Bortles.
I thought it was like Beetlejuice, where you say like Blake Bortles named 3 times, and my ghost would show up.
Watch any like movie in which a disease is rapidly transmitted and the human race is being eradicated, and that's what the Blake is.
All right. Well, I've distracted enough from you talking about your podcast.
Yes.
Please tell our guests or tell
this is basically our podcast, so this is good.
Tell all of our listeners what
Shit
Dynasty
show,
Crossroads
right?
is all about.
Dynasty Crossroads, we break down one player at a time from a film and analytical perspective. Obviously, I'm the film guy and Pete's the analytical guy. And yeah, it's been a blast so far, and I've learned a lot from Peter, and he says he's learned from me, but I highly question that. But we are actually about to head out and record our episode right after this. You know, we've had discussions, and honestly, we're not sure if our podcast is really set up to have guests. We kind of like it just being us two. But we decided to have our first guest on tonight, and Elliot Chris is going to join us. You know, TQE, the Quant Edge, just released today, so we're going to get him on, and we're going to talk about Anthony Miller, who's getting a whole bunch of steam right now, and that should be a great time.
Peter, do you have anything you want to add about the podcast?
Yeah, I was going to say it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot about how Jake tries to win with psychological games, like saying he's not good. No, but seriously, we like it because it's a little different. Instead of a podcast trying to answer every question about every player, we're just looking at one at a time. We don't have to break away from a player just because of time concern. It's just two guys having a conversation about a player. We try to find ones we disagree on to make it more interesting. But honestly, it's even interesting when we agree on a player because it's often for very different reasons. Mm-hmm. And so that's made it really fun as well. And I think it's really going to get interesting as we get into the season and we have, you know, last week's performance or data to look at, and then see where we diverge based on what's happened instead of just looking at everything everyone's looking at over the off season. So I think it's really going to heat up here in a few weeks.
Really cool concept you guys have over there with the film versus analytical juxtaposed back and forth. Really awesome, guys. Thank you so much for being on today. Really enjoyed it. You got an announcement to make, and then we're going to do our afterburns of the week.
Yeah, really quick. So I'm giving away a 2QBs draft guide, as I mentioned earlier. The contest is this: tweet at the Afterburners Pod and tell us who your favorite quarterback is and why. It doesn't have to be football related. So, for example, I know Sal Stefnale really loves Alex Smith because he wrote about Alex Smith and it won him a bunch of awards, which is cool. I love Blake Bortles because of The Good Place and also just because Blake Bortles is the GOAT. So you can tweet us. We're going to pick what our favorite reason is that we've heard. Knowing both of us, we tend to prefer humor. So there's a hint. If you make it funny, you're probably more likely to get picked. And tweet that at the Afterburners Pod, and we will announce the winner on the next podcast.
Which will be next week.
Which, by the way, assuming schedules work out, will feature 2 other people who worked on the 2 quarterbacks draft guide as well.
And that'll be airing on Thursday of next week, right? The 15th?
Yep.
Sorry, the 16th?
Thursday of next week, we will be announcing the winner, regardless of who our guests are. Now, for everyone's favorite segment, probably, the burns of the week. Would our guests like to start, or would you guys like us to start?
I want you guys to start. I want to hear the fire.
Sam, do you have one this week?
I got one, baby, and I'm going to make you and a lot of people out there mad. I recently watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 on Netflix. Obviously, Bobby, huge superhero movie fan. Me, maybe not so much. Decided maybe I should probably acquiesce to his demands and watch some superhero movies. I watched Doctor Strange, not too bad. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, complete garbage. Hated almost every second of it. That blue blob just going out there and becoming like everything on the planet. Kurt Russell was like, not like shooting people, which was weird. Just completely terrible. Anybody who has liked that movie or recommended that movie for me, first off, thank you for tweeting at me. It's very nice of you. But number two, complete garbage, and I'm burning you all for recommending that, including my man Bobby. That's it.
This is the end of the podcast. We're never having another Afterburner. Mine's actually also movie related, so that worked out really well. Our man, he didn't know that. We don't tell each other our burns before the podcast. So our man, Pete Lawrence, who has been trying to steal Sam's co-host job for a while now,
come at me,
tweeted out about going to movies and what candy is the best. And I thought, this is just like an innocent conversation. It's going fine. No one's really making me too mad. And then Steve from the Fantasy Funhouse comes in and says his favorite candy is Dots. And then it gets worse because Sal from the Fantasy Funhouse comes in and says his favorite candy is Dots. If your favorite movie candy is a candy gumdrop, what are you doing with your life? First of all, everyone knows the correct answer is Bunch of Crunch. Mm-hmm. And then second of all, Sal came in with this I'm so much older than you. I've been eating candy since before you were born. My mom owned a bakery for 20 years. I had a candy drawer in my house. It was super messed up. I was super fat as a child. But if anybody knows candy, it's me. And Drops, or whatever the heck they're called, Dots. Sorry.
Dots.
I got so angry I couldn't even find the right word.
You are
Dots are not the correct candy. If you think they're correct, you're just wrong and you need to get help.
Go see therapy.
Yeah, that's it. That's my burn of the week. I'm anti-Dots at the movie.
I'm on board with that Bunch of Crunch over Dots. Way not even close.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll try and keep it movie related. I guess I'll go with people that can't appreciate a movie for what it is. Like me and my wife love to go to, we used to. Now we use streaming services, but we used to go to Redbox and try and find the worst movie we could find. And we had a bunch of fun watching it. Like just the worst B movies or indie movies you can find, like Leprechaun 2, The Revenge of the Leprechaun. And it's the same with big budget movies. People that can't appreciate Transformers for being a fun movie, not a movie that's actually meant to depict an accurate representation of alien robots coming down to destroy you. I guess that really burns me up, especially because, I studied history at school, pretty much every level of school, and people that get really worked up about historical inaccuracies in film, that actually bugs me as someone who studied history. If you're watching a movie with Brad Pitt in it and you're expecting it to be historically accurate or an accurate representation of what we know of the time period, then you need to just stop watching movies because, frankly, you don't understand what they are. So, yeah, screw those guys.
Really quick, I was waiting for it. Peter had two opportunities to burn Sam there, where he said people who don't appreciate movies like what they are, he could have gone like Guardians of the Galaxy 2. No,
I can appreciate just not enjoying a movie, right?
I was waiting for it.
Not enjoying a movie.
I just wanted him to say Guardians of the Galaxy 2 so bad.
I liked 1 and I liked Doctor Strange. 2 was garbage. What do you want from me?
I want Jake to say his burn before we start fighting and forget to hit stop recording at some point.
Yeah, I don't really have one because I want to make this movie related, so I'm trying to think of what I've watched recently. I will say my burn is a movie that I watched for probably 8 minutes and I turned it off. Growing up, I watched a lot of scary movies that I should not have watched at the age that I was. Poltergeist, Exorcist, Hellraiser, all those awful movies. I mean, great movies, but awful movies to watch when you're like 7 years old, 6 years old, and you have older brothers. But it was one of those movies as well for me. One of those scary movies that just gave me nightmares all the time when I was a kid. And, I talked to Scott Fish. I talked to some people about it because I've been meaning to watch it and it just got released on HBO. And I watched the first probably 6, 7, 8 minutes of it, and it was so bad that I turned it off. So why can't people just create new movies? Why does everything have to be a remake? There's always remakes, right? Stop with the remakes. Yes. Do something original, because you will not, especially when it's that much older and that classic of a movie, you're just not going to replicate that feeling for all of us that were, 80s babies. So get the fuck out of here with that.
Or movies from other countries. I'm dropping my burn. I'm jumping on Jake's burn. That's not fair. He had the longest time to think about it. He had the better one, and so I'm jumping on that bandwagon.
Really glad when Dynasty Crossroads jumps into the movie production business after the success of the podcast. Guys, thanks so much for being on, man. This was a lot of fun tonight. We're out of time, unfortunately, so we have to call it, but we'd love to have you on again as the season unwinds and as we get closer into the actual regular season. So we have to get going, though. So before we call it a night, Jake, lead us off with where we can find you. Peter, you're up after that, and then we're going to call it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having us on. 2 weeks ago was a living hell for all of us. So I'm kind of glad that we got to get to know each other in the city the other week, which was that same week. They had a blast with you guys, and thanks for having us on. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at NFL Draft Talker. And again, my graphic handle is at Fantasy Graphics.
Okay, thanks, guys. My name's Peter Howard, just in case you missed that. You can find me on Twitter at PA Howdy, pretty much 24 hours a day. I write for DLF Football, and I'm doing this podcast thing you might have heard of, Dino Crossroads on Twitter. Thanks for checking us out.
And coming to a theater near you this summer, Dino Crossroads, the movie of one guy who does film and one guy who does metrics. Coming soon in a world where two guys collide. All right, so you can find me at Rec Fantasy. That's REKED Fantasy. You can find my work at Dynasty League Football and Two Quarterbacks. And this is the last podcast before I start school in some capacity. We'll still be going. We're going to figure it out. It might be less frequently. It might be just as frequent. But just so everybody's aware, I am starting school.
And just so everyone's aware, I will be full-time employed starting next week as well. So there's a couple.
Yeah, both of us have less time for this podcast.
So, and Jake, you're right. It was awesome to meet you. So really happy we had that a couple weeks ago, guys. This is the Afterburners podcast. You can find us at Afterburners Pod. Don't forget to download, subscribe, and review on iTunes. Find us on Podbean and Stitcher. I am at the Needy One, and Bobby Koch is obviously the movie talker on every trailer. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next week. Don't forget about that contest. Tweet at us about your favorite QB and why.
Until next time, keep it classy, Fantasy Twitter.
I went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, burns, burns.